Hello and welcome to the Business and AI Forum. Today we will have a day of programming focused on showcasing how business and business functions are being impacted by AI technologies. Without a firm understanding of how AI technologies play a role in an organization, we cannot make use of AI as a competitive advantage. My name is Joaquin Milada, and I am the founder of the Swarm community, as well as the host of the AI Digest podcast. And just a little information on Swarm. Swarm is a community of practice working on ESG problem with an emphasis on using open source AI technologies. With me today is Sahaj Vaidya. Sahaj, it's a pleasure to have you today, and we're going to talk about some of the research that you've done in your PhD thesis, in your academic work, in your work in industry. Presently, you are the Chief AI Ethics, Governance, and Curriculum Officer at ZEN. So it's a pleasure to have you, Sahash.
Thank you for having me on this online webinar today and giving me this opportunity to present my thoughts and share my views with this diverse audience. So, thank you for having me today.
You're most welcome. So today you have presented for us, you have kind of organized your thoughts around how do we master the art of AI governance to unlock generative AI in action?
Sure, so let me briefly introduce myself. I'm Sahaj Vaidya and I'm a final year PhD student in Department of Informatics at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and my doctoral research focuses on looking at ethical implications of AI governance and data-driven policy making. So now you know that with the advent of AI, especially with the advent of generative AI and with the release of tools like ChatGPT since the last 1.5 years, every major sector has undergone a very drastic transformation. AI has entered even the most minuscule aspects of our lives. Like, I'll give you a very common example that AI has is such a critical and emerging technology that it's very difficult to keep abreast of all the happenings and developments taking around in this domain. Like, you sleep for 6 hours in a day, you wake up the next day, and there are 15 new developments. So, any new AI governance guidelines or frameworks that we develop need to be adaptable and flexible in order to keep changing with the new developments that take place every day. So, with this talk, I want to utilize this time to share my thoughts on this critical topic of AI governance while focusing on how we can implement practical strategies to adopt and achieve responsible and innovative AI governance. Next slide, please. Now we know that with countries picking up pace with their AI regulations and guidelines, starting from small scale startups to large scale tech companies, everyone has to abide by these regulatory compliances or they may face legal consequences. However, a lot of these policies and guidelines exist in the space out there. We are aware that just a few days back, EU voted in the favor of the AI Act. Even the White House has an executive order on AI, and several private and public organizations like the NIST, ISO have given out their own frameworks for responsible AI governance. So, if we look back on a timeline, in back almost 5 to 6 years ago, in 2018, European Union passed the General Data Protection Regulation, also known as GDPR. This GDPR forms a foundation for the current EU AI Act, which was voted in favor of just a few days ago. The GDPR, while not specifically focusing on the laws surrounding the regulatory usage of artificial intelligence, but it gives a very broad and comprehensive overview of the data privacy laws. Organizations and institutions operating within the European Union region must align their enterprise planning so that they are GDPR compliant. Next slide, please. I would say that given the current landscape of the AI regulations and guidelines, European Union stands as a front runner in these domains. We know that in 2018, just as I mentioned, that European Union passed this GDPR, and then since 2021, they started working on the various draft and iterations of the current EU AI Act as we see into the public domain currently. Even the White House has an executive order on AI, but I would say that currently the state of AI guidelines and strategies within the US is a fragmented approach. Even though the US has an executive order on AI, but currently there are no federally or centrally established guidelines or on maybe how should companies operating within the US or companies having their operations within the US should achieve some kind of certifications to get approved or what kind of regulatory approvals are needed. There is no single consensus on it. The approach is kind of very fragmented in nature with different states passing their own privacy, data protection, and AI guideline laws. Next slide, please. Now, when the question of regulatory compliance comes into picture, there is a very obvious question coming on from even common people and from business organizations that if they need to be compliant with these existing laws and guidelines, how do they achieve innovation while not stifling their growth? So here I would like to present an analogy. Think of these AI regulations and guidelines like a playground or like a playfield. Whenever you go into a playground, say for example, you are playing soccer. In order to play soccer, you need to know the rules about how to score a goal, what are the penalties associated with it. So you need to know these rules in order to play successfully. Similar is the case with AI regulations. When any AI models are put into deployment or put into practical usage for actual utilization in a commercial or real world setting, we need to ensure that these models, that there are safety guardrails surrounding the usage of these systems so that no group or section of the society remains underserved or underrepresented. So where does this question comes into picture? We know that the model is as good as the data that we feed to the model. And who feeds the data to the model? It's we humans. And we humans collect this data and feed this data to the models. So the data that we feed to the models is ultimately a reflection of human cognition and bias. So bias occurs at some form or the other of the model pipeline, whether we want it or not, knowingly or unknowingly. And in order to kind of mitigate or at least bring down the level of bias to zero, we need to ensure that we try to sanitize and clean our data right at an earlier stage of model development rather than the later stages of deployment and evaluation, so that we can at least mitigate or minimize the unfair or unpredictable outcomes when the model arrives at a certain decision. While We cannot bring down the level of bias to zero given the state of AI that we are sitting in. But through early adoption of such measures in the model pipeline, we can at least try to ensure to bring down the negative impact caused by the model decision. And how do we achieve this? Next slide, please. We take this through a human-in-the-loop approach, where a domain expert will kind of utilize the output from the model and explain it to the end users. So you must be wondering that since we are already utilizing these AI-based systems, which are kind of autonomous in nature, why do we need a human in the loop? Well, there are two reasons involved here. One is that we cannot let these systems be completely autonomous, because that might lead to a lot of undesired outputs, which might bear more negative consequences. And the second reason is that the end users may often be common people. They might not exactly understand how and why the model arrives at a certain decision or why a certain output was made. So, in order to kind of accommodate these requirements, we need a human centric approach. And when dealing with these AI based systems, especially when introducing the components of transparency and explainability, privacy becomes a major concern. Let me explain you with the help of an example. Say, for example, you are dealing with a highly sensitive and regulated setting like healthcare. Now, when you tell someone that a robot will perform a surgery for you, or maybe an AI-based tool will perform a diagnostic screening for you, they'll be a kind of little hesitant, a little wary about revealing their personal information to this non-human entity. That non-human factor plays a major role here, because people are kind of little suspicious, like where will their data be stored and collected, how will it be shared and distributed across the network, who will utilize their data. And since they are suspicious about these things, they will be a little reluctant in dealing with these autonomous AI agents. Now, with the introduction of laws like GDPR and the EU Act, people are getting more and more aware about the storage and usage as well as the collection of their data. And hence, we need this privacy enhancing technology when deploying the AI models and putting them into practical application. Next slide, please. So now that we are aware that these things already exist in the space out there, but what often happens is that often the clients and the business organizations do not know what's in store for them and how they should kind of go ahead with their enterprise planning. So currently I'm involved in a project with a non-profit in United Kingdom called World Ethical Data Foundation, where we are working on building a taxonomy for AI regulations. The aim of this project is to kind of equip the clients and the business organizations with the right tool of information to navigate through this regulatory landscape. Because organizations who achieve and balance this art of innovation and compliance will definitely make great strides towards achieving responsible AI governance while still ensuring that they meet the required regulatory approvals and maintaining the safety and ethical responsible standards into their enterprise planning. Next slide, please. So during this entire talk, I mentioned that how the companies, clients, or the business organizations can achieve legal compliance with this emerging and evolving technology. I would like to mention that AI is a very critical and emerging technology. So, together, let us not think of AI as something right out of a sci-fi movie. Let's think of AI as something which is right here around us in our everyday lives to help us complement our repetitive and mundane tasks, enhance and foster our productivity while driving forward the digital transformation and growth, and making us help achieve larger strides beyond leaps and boundaries. To navigate through this regulatory and complex world of AI governance, we definitely need help and support from different consultancies and the firms working in this domain. So let us take a very proactive approach towards achieving responsible AI governance and ensure that we meet these ethical and responsible standards while also maintaining the integrity and innovation that we want and that we desire. Please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or my email with any questions or concerns that you have. Thank you.
Sahash, I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us this high level to low level kind of comprehensive view as to how to look at artificial intelligence and how we need to work alongside the developments of this technology from the perspective of humans. I especially appreciate the analogy that you gave of playing soccer and how AI is a representation of our biases and our cognition. So I thought that those were particularly valuable and insightful ways of looking at the situation.
Yeah, I really appreciate uh, your commitment and dedication to organizing this forum and giving all of us this opportunity to share our insights on this critical and valuable topic.
I you first of all, you're more than welcome, and we're gonna do many more things together. But second of all, I'd love to hear your thoughts around how you would like to help to champion these proactive efforts to minimize the negative impact of AI technologies in society.
So, actually, there are two approaches required here. First is that we need to build and enhance foundational AI literacy amongst people with even technical as well as non-technical background. As I mentioned earlier, that AI has entered even the most minuscule aspects of our lives. So it's not necessary for us to have this sufficient technical know-how in order to gain AI understanding. Even if you do not have the sufficient technical background, it's still necessary to imbibe and cultivate that AI awareness and literacy in order to cope up with the current situation. And second, in order to achieve responsible AI governance, we need a global consensus and voices from people at all levels. We need voice from the regulatory bodies, the governments, the policy makers, the business organizations, communities, and even the common people out there. After all, we need participation at all levels to achieve this global consensus and see that we can design and develop policies that are diverse and inclusive in nature.
I like that the first aspect that you touched upon was education. We need literacy. We need people to become aware of what this is. And I think even before we go into AI, people need to have an idea of what data is, what media is. There's a whole lot of literacy that's sort of missed out for the majority of the population. Um, do you have any thoughts on how we can cross that chasm, that gap of knowledge?
So currently with this company called ZEN, I'm helping them develop courses on AI and generative AI to build this foundational AI literacy for people from different varied backgrounds. So anyone out there listening this conversation, please feel free to check out these courses and see that if they are helpful for your advancement in this field. If you want to sign up for these courses just in order to enhance your understanding or maybe boost your career skills, feel free to check out these courses because this is the need of an hour. It's not something which is distant in the future, it's right here, right with us.
Sahaj, I would love to get some of a sneak peek of some of these foundational ideas around AI technology. Can you please give me an idea of what are some of the underlying concepts that people need to get as a primer, so at least they can be cognizant and aware of how to navigate in this new environment?
So, first of all, whenever getting started with any new technology, not just AI, maybe 100 years back when people were dealing with Industry 4.0 revolution, whenever you want to start with any new technology, you need to understand its pros and cons, the checks and balances associated with it. Then you need to understand how and why it is useful. As the saying goes, that every technology has its double edged sword. So it's up to us how we utilize it. And when it comes to AI, we need to first understand the usefulness and utility of data. Only when we have a thorough understanding of what data is and how can we transform this data into meaningful information, then we'll be able to gauge and create an understanding of the AI systems.
How would we go about in transplanting this in a more holistic manner for students to get acclimated to this kind of knowledge?
So we need to imbibe these things right into the school curriculum from a beginning stage rather than later as an add-on so the students can start learning them at a very earlier stage of their school or maybe their university days so that when they're out there graduated they have at least the foundational knowledge built surrounding these concepts.
On the other side of the coin, I think we've over like I think within this 2-minute conversation, we've addressed sort of what to do with the bottoms up approach as to how to embed this knowledge in the fabric of society. But what about in the side of enterprise where executives are trying to understand and navigate these turbulent times? Their employees need to be upskilled. They need to be upskilled. They don't know where to begin. What would you advise to them, or how would you approach their lack of knowledge?
Yeah, that's a very good question. For any enterprises, businesses, or client organizations looking to adopt AI practices, need to ensure and first of all, they need to ask themselves that is AI really the solution for the problem statement that they are trying to solve? If yes, then they should really have a very good conversation, an interdisciplinary, cross disciplinary conversation that involves people from the human resource, the project and product management side of things, the software development, the policymakers, the board level executives, the C level directors. Everyone needs to get involved and give their opinion on how AI can actually maximize their productivity while minimizing the cost associated with it. Because not every problem requires an AI based solution. Sometimes it can be achieved by something even simpler.
I appreciate you putting that as the first step. Is this even something you need to pursue, or is there a simpler solution? Sometimes when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? Um, so, how would you classify a problem as worthy of engaging with AI solution versus maybe simpler solutions to start?
So, if you're simply looking for automation in your task, like warehouse automation in an Amazon workplace or something like that, maybe not an entire AI based solution is needed. Simply putting automated robots might help you fulfill your task. Whereas if you are trying to kind of complement human productivity, complement and kind of perform joint human machine collaboration, that's the type of task you are aiming at. That's where AI comes into picture.
Okay. At some point, we're going to end up becoming cyborgs, but at least for now, we have to figure out how we're going to combine these elements in a cohesive way, in a separate cohesive way. Um, Sahash, it's been a lovely time speaking with you. Do you have any
Thank you
further
so much.
advice to professionals that are, you know, in their careers that they're not sure where to go or what to do? Apart from looking at some of the courses that you're developing for Zen, do you have any other pieces of advice?
So don't be afraid of AI. Think of it as complementing your approach in fostering your productivity, and utilize it so that you can reap out the maximum potential benefits out of it.
Well said. Thank you, Sahash, and we'll have another one. We'll have another presentation soon enough, and thank you all for tuning in. If you do have any questions, feel free to put your comments below, or feel free to reach out directly to Sahash. She's more than happy to answer questions as you reach out. Um, we'll see you guys in the next presentation.
Yeah. Thank you.